Hi, welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name's Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
And today's October
18th.
18th, we got it right.
Yes.
2016, the day after a city council meeting, the day before the last, mercifully last.
Someone asked if that should be
debate.
canceled, and I agree.
I think at least one opinion writer for the Boston Globe expressed the said, well, maybe they really should just cancel this third one because it's just a pointless exercise.
Plus,
anyway.
the Chicago Cubs are playing.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Well, that definitely takes priority.
I'm going to have split screen.
Yeah. Actually, it was interesting. When I was heading down to work yesterday morning, I ran into Jimmy Tingle.
He's been doing a lot of get out the vote stuff.
Yeah, and so Jimmy was at his mom's house, and so
who I know.
And it's funny, Jimmy, he first thing he says to me, he says, "So what do you think about this politics?"
Oh,
I figured, I felt like I was on a stand-up routine with Jimmy, right?
Man on the street.
We were sort of chatting about it, and I, it did occur to me. I said, it's one thing to talk about all the specifics, but I emphasize the national embarrassment aspect of it all. Like, what does this make us look like as a country that is this what we do?
Yeah.
And he said something, I think he said, well, you should also be aware that in some places in Europe, they're not just laughing, like the people who voted for Brexit, some of them actually align with Trump. So
I could see that.
That's a very much a minority.
Especially Germany and there's some people.
I think for the most part, Europeans look at us as fools right now. But
but I think
there are these pockets.
There is a little bit of a global phenomena about inequality, about all that stuff.
Yeah. So this is on the Cambridge Inside Out. That was the out part.
Well, I would say Jimmy Tingle's pretty inside.
He's very much inside. Yeah. Okay. Great guy. So let's see. So I guess first order of business. Well, actually, let me say one thing. I mentioned last time, mentioned quickly again here, because we always like to emphasize boards and commissions that they're still looking for people for the Recycling Advisory Committee. Yes. I believe I saw they were looking for new members for the Cambridge Conservation Commission. Oh. Again, I didn't read the press release yet, but they particularly like people who have a little background with some biology and some ecosystems and whatever.
One, sure.
But still, it's open to all. So, if you're interested, that's one of the regulatory boards. It's not just advisory; they really do make determinations.
Oh, that's different. Yeah, the advisory they don't listen to half the time. No, I shouldn't say that.
Right. All right. Now, in terms of some, just sort of rummage through a few items that were kind of big items on the city council meeting.
Because there hadn't been a city council meeting for 2 weeks.
That's right. There were 2 weeks off.
But 2 weeks. Yeah. This is a pact. Yeah.
Now we'll get to the bicycle-related ones in a bit here, but just to sort of run through a few of them, we've been sort of talking actually even since Patrick Barrett has been on the show in the past about. Eventually, there was going to be the introduction of the Central Square Restoration zoning petition, and that was, in fact, introduced at the council meeting last night.
Well, at what point? Was that later on? Because I didn't get to that.
It was on the agenda under the applications and petitions.
Oh, so much after the city manager.
And it was nothing there were several people during public comments spoke to it.
Good.
Members of the Sater family who run the Middle East were there. In fact, it's interesting when you look at the signatories on the zoning petition, like the first 9 names are all from the same family.
Related to his family? Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, can you sum it up for those of us that are not familiar? It's to allow for more development? Commercial development?
Actually not a whole lot. What it does is it changes the incentives to allow some additional floor area ratio for growth for residential use. So if you were a person who sort of was perfectly happy to keep your building as is because there was just no advantage to adding it on a little bit for commercial, we actually give you a little bump in FAR if you're building extra residential.
Okay.
It also, and again, I'm not going to try to, this is something we should probably do in greater detail with somebody like George Metzger or Patrick Barrett from the Central Square Business Association or others to do this in greater detail. But there were some recommendations that were part of the C2 committee, specifically things having to do with the exemption of ground floor retail. Now, if you do that, that gives you a little more capacity to build upstairs.
The exemption meaning what?
Meaning in the ground floor area calculation, which is how you measure density, allowable density. If you don't count ground floor retail, that enables you to basically put another floor up on above.
Right.
So it's meant to be an incentive for people to promote retail. The one missing piece, speaking now editorially. from my point of view, is that I don't think anybody's yet figured out a way, if you're going to encourage people to create retail, presumably to have it be more like affordable, mom and pop type retail and whatnot. There's no way under the law that I know of where you can oblige a property owner to maintain reasonable rents or anything to keep that affordable. So
no.
Unless,
you can't do it now with residences,
I think you
so
could,
why would they be able to do
right.
it commercial?
You can probably get such understandings with memoranda of understanding. Maybe, but it's zoning is a kind of a, as Ken Reeves used to say, it's kind of a crude instrument, a blunt instrument.
You have to be careful how you use it.
Yeah, you can say what the shape and height and whatever, but actually, and you can say what type of uses, like whether you want to allow recreational marijuana facilities, that's another matter, or dentist offices or whatever in a particular zone, but you can't sort of dictate what tenants or what rent levels, at least not so easily through zoning. And, it would be essentially rent control if you would do that. Now, some people argue in favor of things like commercial rent control, but we certainly don't have it. And it would be very controversial if anybody tried to push it.
Now, does this address any of this formulary businesses?
Formula businesses, that's actually to me one of the other really exciting aspects of this. And I think it may pass legal muster, but we'll have to see.
Can you define that?
Well, right now, the one problem we have is that there is currently a cap on number of what we call fast food establishments.
Okay.
And that's defined sort of like, well,
like a McDonald's.
Yeah, and it's sort of like you using kind of throwaway stuff and takeout stuff and whatever. Problem is that over time, a lot of really legitimate, desirable places like Clover
are using
actually fit into that category.
Exactly.
So the categorization of fast foods is sort of outmoded.
Right.
So it needs to change. So meanwhile, there are uses in a lot of commercial districts, Central Square being one of them, that people are not so keen on, like phone stores and banks, too many banks.
Too many banks and phone stores.
So they're trying to define in some legally enforceable way, and something will pass, muster if it's challenged. To define what they call a formula business, so that they can basically say, well, sorry, yours is a formula business. We can't have that. And they want to shape the retail environment a little bit that way. Again, I think we really need to get somebody a little more expert to sort of lay out exactly how to define that. But it is written into the ordinance.
Does this petition relax that a little bit, or
it basically would get rid of the fast food cap and replace it with a limitation on formula businesses.
Okay.
Right? Now, certainly if you're a fast food place like a McDonald's, you're a formula business.
Right. But what about Spike's hot dogs? Very few of those.
Right. Well, it doesn't prohibit them. It basically says you have to get some approval process.
Okay. Well, I approve.
So it's an attempt to shape
We need a good hot dog place in Central Square.
I completely agree.
Okay.
You'll never get me arguing that one right there. So
that's interesting.
So anyway, that finally arrived, and we'll see how it goes.
So what was the resolution? It goes to committee?
Well, generally, I mean, some people spoke to it, but when something is first introduced, the with very few exceptions, is simply referred to the planning board and the ordinance committee for a hearing and report.
Okay, so it's basically put into the pipeline.
Now in the pipeline.
But it takes a while. All right.
Yeah, and once the ordinance committee date is set, then that starts the clock ticking for the expiration date on ordination, which is like 90 days afterwards.
It's basically a zoning
petition. It is a zoning. This would be a zoning petition.
All right, well, that's good to know.
One thing I would say, I certainly commented on this the other day, is that I don't really, some may disagree, I don't really see that there's a whole lot of controversy in this particular zoning petition. I think if there were any kind of fear of 140 and 160 foot buildings lining all of Mass Ave from top to bottom, they don't even touch that.
Right.
This basically reasonably modest.
Smaller. Retail.
Well, it allows some additional height, some additional density, but it's not sky's the limit stuff.
Right.
So, just reading the room, as it were, at City Council, I would say this is probably going to get support, general support, maybe unanimous support. The only issue is, are there any modifications? Do some people say, we can't live with that, or maybe this could be better? And I'm going to make another prediction. Dennis Carlone alluded to this last night. I think, if I read him right, that if Central Square, if this petition gets right, some of these things like allowing balconies or properly defining this formula business thing, then other business districts, other districts in the city may then adopt it because it's now an established way of doing things. So this could be a bit of a trendsetter. Yes. So that's another reason why people who are zoning mavens should maybe pay a little attention to this.
Okay.
Another item at the council meeting, just dealing with a few things here, was, I guess I sort of knew this was coming because of all the drought. But in fact, so there was an appropriation request for $3.6 million from free cash, basically to cover the cost differential because we have to now buy MWRA water.
Well, did we have to buy it? I wasn't clear on that. Or did we just want to be sure that we had enough supply?
We still have some water in the reservoirs, and you could probably drain them down lower. But I think at some point you start to run into issues with water quality if you start going down too low.
Is Route 2, the water you see along Route 2, is that coming into our system? Because there isn't any there.
There some, but the Cambridge watershed is Lexington.
It's not that; it comes from that other place.
It's primarily Lexington, Lincoln,
which are all in the drought.
And Weston.
All in that drought area.
But Route 128 and Route 2 do cut through it, so some runoff can make its way. Though there are some systems in place to mitigate that. And honestly, if your reservoirs were super low and then there was some contaminant, then it's a much higher concentration. So there are reasons, and even just in terms of maintaining the environment out there, with stabilized banks and whatever. If the water's too low, it's actually gets a little bit destabilized. So
this was done as of when?
October 11th was when basically they shut off the pipe from the Cambridge reservoirs. And allowed in MWRA. Now, you can have a mix if you want. You don't have to do it exclusively. At least I don't believe so. Certainly, if the pressure in the Cambridge system drops below a certain level, the system used to be that it automatically, MWRA water came in like during a fire, major fire. If there's a big pressure drop, you want to maintain the pressure.
Okay.
So they're going to basically do a bit of a game on it. They're going to game it a bit to use Cambridge water when they can, but allow the reservoirs also to replenish as is possible with rain events. And they may actually have to buy MWRA water this one's for a period of 3 months. I believe, but Louis Di Pasquale, in his current role as budget director.
I was getting confused because he was sitting next to. He was sitting next to.
Well, this is a finance matter, so he gets brought in as a department head dealing with budget matters. Sounds a little like
Rossi, to tell you the truth.
Right. Well, they're Italian guys from East Cambridge.
I know.
Anyway, there seemed to be some hint that it could go on for 6 months. Could go on way into next year.
Well, I guess there's some prediction the drought might continue.
There was at least one reference to that in response to something Dennis Carlone said. So we'll see what's real truth. And, hey, listen, if we get some good snowfall this winter and you get runoff or whatever, for all we know, maybe next spring.
I do remember Kelly brought up he was astounded by the 1 million gallons
I think I have to
outdoor water in Cambridge.
I have to take Craig Kelly, I think, a little bit to school on the math on that because
he agreed it was 1 million.
Yeah, it's 1 million gallons per day. But what Sam Corda, who's the head of the water department, said is that, well, in response to a question about would conservation measures be warranted. And Sam said, well, actually, you could do that, and maybe we could save 1 million gallons a day that way. But the total consumption for the city is probably 12. I think the last I heard it was like 12 million gallons a day. So you could shave off a certain percentage that way. But in fact, we're not like we are in a suburban community where they tell people to stop watering your lawn.
I know, but I guess I too, though, have to admit that if it's only outdoor water use, I was a little shocked myself. That seems like a lot of water.
Well, when you spread it out over the whole city,
remember. It's also including
remember,
city parks and stuff.
And
Harvard and MIT. Actually, they brought that up, so that's really where it's going.
I think that there's at least some provision for gray water use for either Harvard or MIT.
I've seen sprinklers going a lot.
And there are some of the the campuses of some of the big companies.
So it's not just residences.
So you could save a little, but honestly, that's not going to save the day. So conservation is great, but it's a drop in the bucket. So
well, it should always be emphasize that.
Yeah. So anyway, that was something to be said. There was some discussion about the early voting, which might as well give the dates on that. It's October 24th to November 4th, not on Sundays, but on Saturday. It does include Saturdays, and it's in 5 locations.
Right.
We said gave them last week.
You will get another mailing. You should have gotten one already.
Right. So the word's getting out there, but it commences October 24th, which is coming up real soon.
Yes.
I was down by the Election Commission yesterday, and while I was by there, I don't know why exactly was up exactly, but I have to say they were incredibly busy. Normally they'll take time. I'll sort of show them some interesting things, and we'll chat a little bit, and then I head on my way. But you could sort of tell they were saying like, we'd really like to talk to you, but we're really busy. I think they're getting
trying to set up the stations and stuff with all the stuff.
Not only that, but they're getting absentee ballot requests, and they're having to process them. They're getting early voting requests because you can request to do early voting via mail.
I mean, you could go in actually.
For absentee,
can you go in now?
You can walk right into the Election Commission
and fill out to say you're going to be
absentee.
out. For absentee. That was the only way you could do early voting before.
But early voting, you can actually mail in, and they'll mail you one, and then you mail it back, and then you can do early voting that way as well. So I suspect that's a big piece of what's going on there right now. Right. So they're busy, and honestly, they're going to be really busy with all this early voting. Yeah. Might be a good idea. However, it is a good idea, but it spread out over 11 days, many hours per day. There's staffing and whatever, and expense, and that was actually what was the agenda.
There were 2 orders there,
having to do with some additional expense to cover that. Now, just sort of running through our little list here, is sort of basically in the order of things I commented on Civic Journal. There were, was it 5 different orders having to do with some very particular environment-related matters?
Yeah, at least 5. I wrote it down somewhere.
Certainly one was the zero waste plan.
Yes, that was 3, I think.
It was stated that, right now I think it's just up in north.
That was number 6,
North or northwest Cambridge has a organics collection now.
Monday trash route,
The Monday trash route. And it's been promised that they're going to try and push that across the city soon.
By this 2017.
Yeah, so they're expecting or targeting fall of 2017.
Yeah, 6 through 9 were all related somehow to the environment.
Yeah, so it was low carbon energy supply, community-wide greenhouse gas inventory, consultant or augment core environmental goals. There was another one having to do with leaf blowers and things.
That was the one I listened to. There was something to do with new kinds of equipment that will take away that noise.
Yeah, I was curious as to why these were all showing up all at once there. My speculation is that since these are more in the nature of not so much public works as much as environmental planning, there is the division of environmental and transportation planning within the community development department, and they have finally started to fill in some of the positions that had been vacant. So my guess, and this is only a guess, is that new people are now on board. There are things that were basically waiting, and now they're being moved on.
What was the position that was filled?
I think it's basically actually I'm not sure. I think it's a deputy director position. Remember, Iram Farouk was deputy, she's the director. So that opened up that position. So I believe it maybe the person who actually spoke at the meeting there, I forgot her name, may have been there, and it may be related to that. We'll see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, so I didn't. So you did not hear all the comments on any of it. I mean, I
heard some. I heard some. Yeah. We should probably maybe get into the bike stuff a little bit here.
Yeah, because that certainly dominated. At least you were there for public comment. A lot of the public comment. And also, there were how many orders? 7, 6, 8. Right.
Related to bicycles, and there was a big rally beforehand by some advocates.
Right in front of the City Hall.
In front of City Hall.
Yeah.
I mean, it should have been in a nutshell. We could go through these one by one, but in a nutshell, as
it was 2 to 8, they were all. Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it last week, but it was sort of big in the news. There was a fatality in Porter Square.
Right.
A couple of weeks ago now.
Did that happen before our show?
Yes. Yeah.
We talked about it? Okay.
And naturally, there's going to be a response to this, just like it happened when the woman was killed in Inman Square.
Inman Square. Yeah.
Right. As I, sort of have to point out though, the fatality. We don't have police reports or anything like that, but it appears that this was it was an altercation with a large truck.
18
Right.
Wheeler.
Yes, an 18-wheeler. And one of these 8 orders at the meeting addressed the issue of large trucks. Few of the orders address the problem of problematic intersections, which is really where most of these bad incidents occur.
Right.
The thing which I question is why, when there is a fatality at an intersection, an interaction with a truck, why there were so many orders that were calling for so-called protected bike lanes along stretches which, whether they're good ideas or not, have absolutely no relationship to the cause of
Plus,
this
there is
death.
a bike lane there.
There actually is a protected facility.
Can you just define protected versus dedicated versus?
All right, to me, the ultimate example of a protected bicycle facility would be like the path along Memorial Drive. Bicyclists do not ride in traffic on Memorial Drive.
What about Western Ave, though? What's that called?
And then that is one as well.
Okay.
Now
so it's totally separate from the road.
A totally separate one.
That is called a
cycle track.
Cycle track.
Now, the one that they built on Western Avenue is actually built up on the sidewalk.
Right.
So that's not always what people want to do.
Exactly.
I mean, I think if you're going to do a separate facility, I don't want it right next to the curb, because as a cyclist, I don't want to fall off the curb.
Well, that's what Kelly said last night. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of idealism in what people were clamoring for.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of detail work, which is, I'm glad, just to jump ahead a little bit, that there was a late order from Mayor Simmons to sort of consolidate a lot of these things and look at it a little more holistically.
For the administration to look at it and come back with timelines. What can you do now? What can you do in the future? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just sort of rattle off a few of these, and
all right, but let's go back to the Porter Square. So there was a bike lane there.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes this sort of a little strange to me, is that that's a stretch of road in Porter Square. Parking is prohibited.
Exactly.
So people were talking about the need to remove parking. I said, well, there was no parking there, so that was not an issue. The city did, I've never liked these, but they did put in what they call a jug handle, which is a little offshoot lane that cuts off to the right from the travel lane for cyclists, where you kind of come around and then the light changes and then you kind of cross more or less like a pedestrian does to get up ahead of traffic and make you make a left turn.
Is that like in front of Broger Bagels there? Is that what you're talking about?
There are a few, actually by Christopher's, or is it Christopher's?
All right, so it's right in that area. Okay.
There's one actually in front of, over by Johnson Gate at Harvard as well like that.
I see
I'm not a fan.
I know what you mean.
And I don't think cyclists use them much.
You're right.
Right. So you can put in facilities, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be suitable. Right. Again, this is something I could talk on for days, but so for example, there was some talk about wanting to, what they do on Ames Street is a design I absolutely dislike, which is
that's down here,
down by MIT, where they move the cars out kind of into the middle of the road and have the cyclists ride to the right of the cars, between the cars,
to the right of the cars and the sidewalk,
and between that and the curb. Now, they say, this way you won't get doored. Well, of course you could get doored, because passengers can exit. You also have a lot more interaction with pedestrian traffic.
True.
And in the wintertime, this is not the Netherlands, folks. There's going to be snow. And
I think they get that in the Netherlands.
Not in the way we get a New England winter, though.
Okay. All
right. So there are some problematic aspects to that. There are also some proposals. They want to do this either temporarily or permanently along places like Mass Ave, the whole length, along Broadway, like right in front of my house, which I'm not happy to hear about.
What are you talking about? The flex? What are the flex pole things? That's what
I think it's just sort of basically you jam it into the road, and it's sort of like a temporary mark. It's like traffic cones, only
flex posts, separated bike lanes at intersections.
Yeah. Now, if you want to do it by intersections, that's okay.
I think that makes sense.
I think that can work okay.
Yeah. Except the tractor trailer, it's a flex post. It's not.
Well, so in other words, if a car were to go over it, it's not going to it's not going to destroy it, right?
No, but it could still go through it and hit a bike.
Yeah, doing something to I think augment and make louder and clearer the bike lanes and whatever their intersections is a good thing. Now, on the other hand, I don't agree with the way the city paints out some of these lanes, where they are putting cyclists to the right of right-turning vehicles, and they're encouraging it, and I don't think they should be encouraging that ever.
doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So some of the person who wrote the book Street Smarts, which is used by some states for bicycling safety, is adamantly opposed to what the city actually does.
Really?
Yeah, that's John Allen. So, there's some things to be asked about here. I'll say also, and we'll definitely have to talk about this more in the next half hour, but along places like Broadway and Mass Ave, there are a lot of places where they've done these so-called sidewalk bump outs for the sake of pedestrians. Well, if you're going to move bicyclists over to the right of cars, then you're going to have to remove all those bump outs, because that's exactly where the bicyclist is going to go. Or you're going to reshape them so they go up on the sidewalks and then down onto the road.
I think more pedestrians are just as afraid of bicycles coming at them as they are cars.
Well, I'm going to assert here.
I've had it happen to me.
I'm going to make a statement here that a historical observation, and some people can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when the bicycle committee was first, because that's sort of our chief advocacy group, that was started as an initiative. I was actually there. We went to Mayor Wolf's office to create the Cambridge Bicycle Committee.
When was it?
It was a guy named Rich Collin was there. This was actually when Alice Wolf was mayor.
Wow.
So it would have been like
ago.
1991 or thereabouts.
90s.
Okay, so that was established. It then became kind of a regular city thing. And there was so much harsh advocacy that there was an outcry from pedestrians.
Oh, so that's why there's a pedestrian
that's why they
committee.
created the pedestrian committee.
Okay.
So I just need to point out that hardcore, uncompromising cycling advocacy doesn't always go well with pedestrians.
Exactly.
So that's why we have a pedestrian committee.
Okay.
Now, now they all get along, everybody's happy, whatever. But there is appropriately a certain level of pushback, I think, that has to happen here. So anyway, we'll have to talk a little bit more about this, in a few minutes here. But it was a big deal. The rally was big. If you disagreed, you best just stay away. That was one of those things. So anyway, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So we'll see you then on Cambridge Inside Out.